It was a stormy night in Eden Hills, not the kind with thunder and rain, but the kind where hearts break and illusions shatter. Madeline sat quietly at the dinner table. Her fingers trembled slightly as she stirred her tea. Across from her, Jake, her husband of 7 years, scrolled through his phone without looking up. "I met someone," he finally said. Just like that. No apology, no guilt, no hesitation. Madeline blinked. Once, twice. The room felt colder. She searched his face for a trace of the man she once loved. But his eyes were already somewhere else, probably with her. The woman he left for was dazzling, at least on the outside. Her name was Vanessa, a sharp-tongued tech executive known for her designer heels, flawless makeup, and ruthless ambition. Jake fell hard, chasing the image of power and prestige. "Vanessa understands me," he had said. Madeline didn't answer. She didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt. It did, deeply. But she had learned long ago that storms don't ask for your permission, they just come. Jake walked out the next morning, suitcase in hand, full of confidence. He thought he was leveling up. He thought Madeline was just ordinary. But Madeline had a secret. Late at night, while Jake slept, she coded. While he mocked her little startup hobby, she was building the foundation of something massive. She was a ghost in Silicon Valley, a silent investor, a masked founder. No one knew who was behind the AI company rising on the tech charts. No one guessed it was her. Now Jake was gone. Madeline was alone, but not broken. And her creation, it was about to change the world. The world would know her name. And Jake? He'd be lucky if she even remembered his, because karma doesn't knock. It codes, it launches, it dominates. And Madeline, she was about to become the tech queen of Eden Hills. You've heard stories of revenge, of betrayal, of unexpected triumphs. But you've never heard one quite like this. So buckle up, because this story isn't about heartbreak. It's about rebirth and a woman who rose from the shadows into global power. Madeline Grace Holloway was the kind of woman most people overlooked, not because she was forgettable, far from it. Her presence had a quiet strength, a kind of grounded energy that made people feel safe, even if they didn't know why. She wasn't flashy. She didn't wear designer bags or flood her social media with selfies. She didn't chase trends or thrive on likes. Madeline was calm, deliberate, curious. In Eden Hills, a suburb where appearances often mattered more than reality, Madeline was an outlier. While neighbors obsessed over community events and designer kitchens, she cared more about data, systems, and elegant code. To the outside world, she was a soft-spoken housewife married to a rising entrepreneur. Just another background character in the glossy play of upper-middle-class life. But behind closed doors, Madeline was something else entirely. Each morning began with a routine she cherished. A cup of dark roast coffee brewed precisely to 92 degrees Celsius. A walk through the garden where she talked to her plants like old friends. Then, a full block of uninterrupted time at her custom-built workstation, tucked away in a soundproof room Jake never paid attention to. It was there she came alive. It was there she built Argentis. Argentis wasn't just another app. It was an adaptive artificial intelligence platform she had been developing in secret for 4 years. Its core purpose, to reimagine how small businesses accessed and leveraged AI without selling their data to corporate giants. She didn't want to go viral. She wanted to solve a real problem, to build something that lasted, to create quietly, on her own terms. Her skills had been forged long before Jake entered her life. At 14, she hacked her school's grading system, not to cheat but to prove it was vulnerable. At 17, she received a scholarship to MIT, but turned it down to care for her ailing father. She chose family over fame. That sacrifice taught her something valuable. The world rarely applauds quiet strength. Jake Holloway was the kind of man the world did applaud. Charismatic, ambitious, smooth-talking. He met Madeline at a networking event she didn't want to attend. He had confidence and a quick wit, and she had just lost her father a month prior. He made her laugh at a time when nothing else could. He saw her intelligence at first. He admired her calm demeanor, her precision, her ability to listen without interrupting. He told her she made him feel centered, but over time, admiration turned into resentment. Jake didn't want someone grounded. He wanted someone who dazzled. The deeper he got into his own business, a shaky marketing startup fueled more by buzzwords than results, the more he felt threatened by Madeline's quiet competence. He mocked her routines, her boring tech work, her love for logic. "You should do something fun for once," he'd say. "Something spontaneous. You think too much." Madeline would smile, let him believe what he needed to. She never told him she was already funding his competitors. She never told him Argentis had received a 7-figure pre-seed investment under a different name. He didn't ask. He didn't care. Instead, Jake began drifting. Long work trips, late-night meetings, emotional distance. Madeline felt the shift, but said nothing. She wasn't the type to beg. She believed love should be chosen daily, not demanded, so she poured her energy into her creation. Line by line, Argentis came to life. In between grocery runs, silent dinners, and half-hearted conversations, Madeline negotiated contracts, hired developers anonymously, and guided product development under the alias MG Lane. Only her attorney and lead engineer knew her true identity. Madeline was building an empire beneath her husband's nose, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because it was hers. The marriage, however, was dying slowly. Like a house with a leaking roof, it looked fine from the street, but inside it was crumbling. They stopped sleeping in the same bed. Then they stopped talking. Eventually, they became polite strangers sharing a mortgage. Madeline wasn't devastated. She was disappointed. She had believed in Jake once, but that version of him was gone. Then came Vanessa. Jake met her during a leadership retreat in San Diego. Vanessa Calloway was everything Jake thought he wanted. Polished, glamorous, loud in all the right ways. She posted photos with tech CEOs, attended panels on blockchain despite not knowing what it was, and had over 200,000 followers. Madeline saw the photos, the captions, the way Jake's tone changed when he talked about work. She knew, and yet she didn't confront him. She waited, not because she was weak, but because she was done explaining her worth. She simply kept building. By the time Jake officially asked for a separation, Argentis had completed its beta launch. The response was overwhelming. Small business owners loved it. A Fortune 500 company requested a meeting. Her alias, MG Lane, was being called a mystery genius by industry blogs. When Jake said he was leaving, Madeline simply nodded. "No questions?" he asked, almost smug. "No," she replied. "If you're certain, I won't stop you." He left the next morning. Vanessa picked him up in a black Range Rover. They didn't look back, not once. Madeline stood at the front porch, barefoot, holding a mug of coffee, watching them drive away. Then she turned and went back inside, to her code, to her future, to the life she had always deserved. 3 weeks after Jake left, Madeline received a letter. Not an email, not a text. A letter, embossed, formal, with the logo of one of the largest venture capital firms in California, stamped in silver foil on the front. To MG Lane, urgent. Madeline locked the door of her office and opened it slowly, hands steady, heart racing. She had received offers before, smaller ones, partnerships, investment deals, even acquisition attempts. But this was Atlas Ventures. She read the letter twice. They weren't just interested. They wanted to buy a controlling stake in Argentis for $110 million, but there was one condition. The founder, M.G. Lane, had to appear in person at their San Francisco headquarters to finalize the negotiations. Madeline sat in silence. This was it, the point of no return. If she accepted, she would step into the spotlight, reveal who she was, risk everything, including Jake finding out. Not that she cared anymore, not in a personal way, but she knew him well enough to predict his reaction. Jake had always been obsessed with appearances. He had called Madeline small-town smart, told her she lacked the killer instinct to survive in the tech world. He never saw her. He saw a shadow and walked away from a genius. A week later, Madeline stood in front of a mirror inside a luxury hotel suite in downtown San Francisco. She wore a deep navy suit, no frills, no bright colors, just precision and presence. Her hair was tied back. No makeup except for clear gloss and a touch of powder. She didn't want to perform. She wanted to own the room. And she did. The executives expected someone different. They expected a man, or at least someone louder. Not a woman who spoke softly and carried more certainty than any pitch deck. Madeline answered every question before it was asked. She walked them through the infrastructure, the scale model, the long-term roadmap. She impressed them. No, she humbled them. The deal was signed that same afternoon. Argentis was officially valued at $380 million. Madeline retained 51% ownership and full creative control. She wasn't selling out. She was scaling up. She returned to Eden Hills that night quietly. No headlines, no articles. Just her, a set of keys to a new satellite office downtown, and an inbox filled with interview requests. And then, it happened. A week later, a LinkedIn post went viral. Someone had leaked her identity. M.G. Lane was Madeline Holloway. Within hours, tech blogs exploded. Mysterious tech founder behind AI breakthrough is quiet housewife from Eden Hills. Wife left by entrepreneur is now worth more than him, by a lot. Jake Holloway's ex built a tech empire while he was cheating. The article hit Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, memes, reactions, podcasts, and somewhere in the middle of all of it, Jake saw it. At first, he laughed. "No way," he told Vanessa. "It's a publicity stunt. That's not my Madeline." But as he scrolled deeper, his smile vanished. There she was, sitting on stage at a panel beside billionaires, speaking about the ethical future of AI. There she was, turning down an offer from one of his past business idols. There she was, on a magazine cover with the headline, "The Woman Who Coded Her Own Crown." Jake's world collapsed quietly. His marketing startup had failed months ago. He hadn't told Vanessa yet. They were living off her money, and that well was drying fast. Vanessa was already irritated. She didn't sign up to babysit a broke dreamer. She wanted influence, access. And suddenly, Madeline had both, all of it. Then came the final blow. Jake got a message from an old friend, someone he had pitched to before, a small business incubator that had once refused to back him. "Dude, did you know your ex-wife just bought out Eden Labs?" Eden Labs, the firm that rejected Jake, the firm he had once insulted publicly on Twitter, the firm that now had a new chairwoman, Madeline Grace Holloway. She had bought them outright, not for profit, for precision, because Eden Labs owned Jake's old investor network. She now controlled every contact Jake had ever hoped to impress. Every door he wanted to open, she held the key. Jake tried to contact her. He called. No answer. He emailed. Bounce back. He drove back to the house. A new gate had been installed. Security didn't let him pass the driveway. He stood outside in the cold, watching through the glass as Madeline walked through her garden, tea in hand, air serene. She didn't see him, or maybe she did, and chose not to react. Because this was the moment that changed everything. Not the fame, not the money, not the empire, but the realization on Jake's face that he had left behind the greatest woman he would ever know, and she didn't just survive. She ascended. The world knew her name now, but power never comes without cost. In the weeks that followed the reveal of MG Lane's identity, Madeline's life transformed at a dizzying pace. She was invited to speak at summits, offered book deals, even approached by Hollywood producers. Everyone wanted a piece of her. But Madeline wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing purpose. And purpose, she quickly discovered, came wrapped in pressure, doubt, and enemies she hadn't seen coming. The first challenge came from the board. Although she retained majority control of Argentis, her new board of advisors, most of whom had no idea their quiet co-founder had been running things all along, began pushing back. "Your vision is impressive, Madeline, but we need scalability faster. You should consider pivoting toward defense contracts. That's where the real money is. We need a face for the brand, someone dynamic, marketable, someone a little more polished," one executive added. He didn't need to say the rest. He meant male, flashy, easier to package. Madeline listened, then silenced the room with one sentence. "I didn't build Argentis to become another soulless tech empire. If that's what you want, sell your shares now." There was a beat of silence. Then, slow nods. They got the message. Still, resistance grew. Critics began questioning how she remained hidden for so long. Some accused her of manipulating the system. Others suggested she had stolen the code from a male partner, a common reflex when powerful women appear out of nowhere. She was doxed. Her personal data leaked. A journalist even tried to interview her elderly mother, who lived in a quiet coastal town and hadn't spoken to the media in years. Madeline responded the only way she knew how, with clarity and calm. She released a public letter, not a press conference, not a viral video, explaining her journey, her mission, and why she had hidden her identity. "I didn't stay silent because I lacked confidence," she wrote. "I stayed silent because I was focused. I didn't need applause to build something meaningful, but now that I'm here, I will not be silenced again." The letter went viral, but it didn't solve everything. Behind the scenes, the emotional weight was heavier than ever. She no longer had the anonymity she once loved. Every time she left the house, cameras followed. Strangers asked for photos. She missed walking unnoticed through bookstores, sitting in cafes with her notebook, talking to her plants without judgment. The worst moments came late at night, alone in her glass-walled apartment overlooking the city skyline. She would look out at the blinking lights and wonder, was this what I wanted? Then came the attacks from Jake. Unable to rebuild his reputation in the tech world, Jake filed a lawsuit claiming partial rights to Argentis, alleging that marital contributions entitled him to equity. It was a weak case and easily dismissed in court, but it dragged her name through tabloids. "Spiteful billionaire ex-wife keeps husband from fortune," one headline read. "Tech queen or ice queen?" another asked. Madeline refused to dignify them with a public rebuttal. Privately, she broke down, not because of the attack, but because Jake knew her. He knew what kind of attention would hurt most. He knew she'd built her life on logic, structure, and trust, and he targeted that, not for justice, but for control. For a moment, Madeline considered disappearing again, letting it all go, selling everything, vanishing to a cottage in Spain, building something new under a fresh name. But then she remembered something, a moment from years ago, during their 3rd anniversary. They had been driving through the mountains, and Jake had casually said, "You'll never be one of them, you know, the real players. They'd eat someone like you alive." At the time, she had laughed it off, but now that voice echoed, not as a wound, but as fuel. So she stayed, and she fought. She doubled down on Argentis, launching an expansion initiative to bring affordable AI to low-income communities. She partnered with women-led accelerators, poured resources into ethical AI research, and built mentorship programs for young girls in STEM. And people noticed. Former critics became cautious supporters. Younger generations called her a pioneer. And business giants, the same ones who once overlooked her, now invited her to the table with respect. But with power came new temptations. Investors dangled billions in front of her to go public. Marketing agencies begged her to become a brand. Magazine covers kept coming. She was offered her own TV series, a docu-series, a memoir deal, and the attention? It started to affect her team. Some developers began leaving, citing burnout and a sense that the company had lost its original mission. Madeline's top engineer, the one who had stood by her since the beginning, asked for a sabbatical. That was the wake-up call. Madeline paused everything. She froze hiring. She cancelled the IPO talks. And she took her team on a month-long retreat, not in a luxury hotel, but in a small research center in Oregon, where they spent days reconnecting with the mission. There, something shifted. Madeline re-centered. She reconnected with why she started all of this, not to crush Jake, not for media power, but because she believed in accessible, ethical technology, in doing things differently. When they returned to Eden Hills, things were clearer. She made changes, more flexible hours, a restored focus on innovation over scale, and a simple rule: no ego, just purpose. Meanwhile, Jake's life had imploded. Vanessa had left, publicly, with a scathing video about toxic exes and false promises. His startup debt caught up with him. His name was attached to a failed crypto project that tanked overnight. He ended up moving back to his parents' home in Nevada. And while the world forgot him, Madeline flourished. But it wasn't the triumph that mattered most. It was who she became through the fire. More confident, more whole, more aware of her power and her limits. She no longer coded for approval. She no longer needed to prove anything. She had become the very thing Jake never imagined. A woman who owned her space completely. And when she walked into rooms now, conferences, board meetings, global panels, people didn't ask who she was. They already knew. The night of the Eden Tech Global Summit had arrived. It was the biggest technology event of the year, streamed live to over 30 countries, attended by presidents of global companies, developers, economists, and media outlets hungry for sound bites and viral moments. And at the heart of it all, the most anticipated panel, the future of human-centered AI. Headlining it was Madeline Grace Holloway. She had almost declined. She hated the spectacle. But this summit was different. It wasn't about fame. It was about influence. And this time, she had something to say that the world needed to hear. As she stepped out of the black sedan, cameras flashed wildly. Dozens of journalists screamed her name. "Madeline, over here! Madeline, what are you wearing? Is it true you turned down Amazon's offer last month? Will Argentis remain private forever?" She didn't respond. She simply walked forward, calm, composed, precise, wearing her signature navy, no sparkle, no pretense. A woman who no longer needed to scream to be heard. Inside the auditorium, the stage was grand. 4 panelists, a moderator, and thousands of eyes watching, both in person and online. But something unexpected happened just minutes before the session began. Her assistant rushed backstage with a pale face. "Jake's here," she whispered. "Front row, press badge. I don't know how he got in." Madeline froze, just for a second. She hadn't seen Jake in over a year, not in person. Not since the lawsuit. What was he doing here? "Should I remove him?" the assistant asked. Madeline looked toward the curtains. Then she breathed in and shook her head. "No, let him watch." She walked on stage to a standing ovation. Jake stood with everyone else, clapping with an odd, twitching smile on his face. He looked tired. His suit didn't fit right. The fake confidence was visible from miles away. She took her seat. The panel began. Questions came one after another about algorithmic bias, global expansion, privacy concerns, AI's role in education. She answered each one with grace and insight. The audience hung on every word. And then came the moderator's final question, a surprise. "Ms. Holloway, you've built an empire quietly, rose from obscurity, and somehow stayed grounded while holding immense power. What advice would you give to women watching this, especially those who feel overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside by the very people closest to them?" The auditorium fell silent. Even Jake stopped breathing. Madeline paused, staring straight ahead. Not at Jake, but through him. Then she leaned forward and spoke slowly. "I'd tell them, you don't need to prove your worth to people who benefit from underestimating you. I'd tell them, silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. I'd tell them, build in secret if you must, but never let anyone convince you that small beginnings mean small dreams. And most importantly, I'd say, when someone leaves you behind, thinking you're no longer useful, let them go. Because when your light finally rises, they won't recognize you, and by then, it will be far too late." The room exploded into applause, thunderous, emotional. People stood, some cried. The moment was instantly trending online. But in the front row, Jake sat completely still. He knew that was for him. No names mentioned, no scandal aired, just truth, like a scalpel, cutting through every lie he had told himself. He left before the panel ended, didn't say a word, didn't try to reach her again, because the final nail had been driven into the coffin of his delusion. Madeline had become untouchable, not just successful, legendary. 6 months after the Eden Tech Summit, Madeline stood on the cliffs of the Pacific Ocean, watching the tide roll in. No cameras, no phone, just the breeze, the salt, and the sound of waves carving stone, slowly but permanently. This was her first true pause in almost 5 years. She'd taken a break from Argentis, appointing a trusted COO to oversee daily operations. Not because she was tired, but because she had finally realized that true leadership didn't mean doing everything. It meant building something that could stand without her. She was no longer the woman who stayed up till 4 a.m. in the garage debugging machine learning scripts by herself. She was no longer the woman hiding behind initials and fake company names. She was no longer trying to prove herself to a man who had walked away without understanding what he left behind. She was Madeline Grace Holloway, a name the world now knew, but more importantly, a name she had reclaimed for herself. And she had changed, not just in power or wealth or influence, but in essence. She no longer felt the need to anticipate the next betrayal, the next undermining comment, the next moment of erasure. She had survived them all, and because of that, she no longer braced herself in rooms full of men. She no longer diluted her brilliance to make others comfortable. She had created a culture of integrity inside Argentis. She had mentored over 300 young women across 6 countries. She had funded open-source education tools for rural schools, and she had personally backed a coding academy for single mothers rebuilding their lives. Her legacy was being written, not in news articles or Forbes covers, but in the ripple effect of quiet empowerment she left behind. One of her proudest moments came not from a headline, but from a letter. It arrived one spring morning in a simple envelope. No brand, no logo. Inside was a note from a teenage girl in Oklahoma who had watched the Eden Tech panel. They told me I'd never make it in tech because I'm too quiet. But then I saw you, and I realized maybe quiet girls like us don't need to get louder. Maybe we just need to start building. Taylor, 16. Madeline read the note 5 times, then she framed it on her desk. That was her reward. Not revenge, not attention, impact. And in her personal life, something had shifted too. She began seeing someone quietly, not a tech founder, not a business tycoon, just a man named Elijah. A school teacher from Portland she met at a conference where she had spoken about AI in education. He didn't care about Argentis. He didn't flinch at her success. He asked her questions that had nothing to do with work, and she liked that. With him, she didn't have to be the tech queen. She could just be Maddie, the woman who loved jazz vinyl, old poetry, lemon tea, and long walks at dusk. They took things slowly. No rush, no labels, just peace. As for Jake, last she heard he had left social media entirely. Word got around that he was working in retail, managing a chain electronics store. He had become what he once mocked, someone ordinary. And yet, Madeline didn't feel satisfaction, just clarity. Jake was a lesson, a chapter, one she had outgrown, not with rage, but with grace. She no longer needed karma to punish him. Her life was her answer. One warm afternoon, walking through the gardens behind her Eden Hills home, the same home he once dismissed as quaint, she noticed a robin building a nest in the lemon tree by her window. She sat nearby with a sketch pad and watched the bird work, straw by straw, thread by thread, careful, focused, not seeking applause, not waiting for praise, just building. And that was her now, not fighting, not proving, just being. Madeline's journey wasn't just about technology, betrayal, or hidden billions. It was about something deeper, something universal. How many of us have been underestimated? How many have stayed quiet, hoping our time would come? While others walked away, thinking we had nothing left to offer, Madeline's story is a reminder that you don't have to fight loudly to be powerful. You don't need revenge to win. You just need to keep building quietly, relentlessly, until the world can no longer ignore what you've become. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever been left behind by someone who thought you had no future? Have you ever been told you were too quiet, too soft, too late, or simply not enough? Did someone ever underestimate your worth, only to regret it later? Share your story in the comments. Your words might inspire someone else who's still in the middle of their battle. Let's fill this comment section with real voices, real stories, and real strength. If Madeline's story moved you, even a little, don't leave without hitting that like button. And if you want more stories like this one, filled with emotion, power, and life lessons, subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Because this isn't just a video, it's a community of people rising quietly and powerfully.